Dad has made some excellent progress today.
Your dad, he's a fun guy, right?
And I love him so much, and I think he's the greatest dad in the world.
Welcome back to the Working on the Dad Pod. I'm Alex, he's Ethan, and tonight we are working on Bring Your Child to Work Day. I'm going to be honest, Ethan's really the only one working on this. If this is your first time here, you have not heard this, I work from my living room. Like, my children are sleeping about as close to my office as I am right now. So this is more of Ethan's going to talk about it, but we're going to expand a little bit past just like what Ethan's day like was today. I heard it was magical. I've heard rumors might have been his best work day ever.
Big facts.
I don't know all the details of why. Seen a couple of pictures, but heard big things. But before I thought it was a little, a little kismet, right? That tonight is also the NFL draft. I don't know if you remember this story, but or even if you remember Deuce Vaughn, running back from Kansas State, and he was a running back from Kansas State. He now is part of the Denver Broncos organization. But 3 years ago in April, sniping the night of the NFL draft, he was drafted by the Cowboys, and his dad is a scout for the Cowboys and got to call him on the phone. And this memory stuck with me a lot because Jerry Jones puts Chris Vaughn, Deuce's dad, on the phone, and he goes, "Hey man, it's Dad. How would you like to come to work with me tomorrow?" And I thought of that because I'll be honest, I've got the NFL draft on mute on my iPad, playing over here, and we're talking about bringing your kid to work. And I thought that was just sort of a cool little memory.
Yeah, that
hopefully not as cool as the ones you made today.
No, I mean it's definitely somewhere between that and LeBron James getting Bronny drafted on the Lakers with him, so that the two of them could play in the NBA together.
Yeah, I think as a scout, his dad did not have the kind of sway necessary to be like, with this 4th round pick, we should really, pick my son.
Right.
But I guess before we get into you bringing your daughter to work today, I'll go ahead and do my story time.
Please.
Because I'm guessing that your story, unless you've got something else, I'm guessing your story time is really about your day and segueing into the main topic.
Yeah. So why don't you do your thing, bro?
I'll go ahead and start. So this weekend, I've been toying with how to say this for a few days now. This weekend, we taught our kids about racism.
Fun. Hold on.
Okay.
Question before you get into it. Was this a voluntary lesson or a necessity? Okay. All right.
No, this is a voluntary, trust me. Okay. This is much lighter. This is one of those, pivot back. Because we were eating dinner on Saturday night. We were out at a restaurant. We are getting some tacos. And no, that's not where the lesson came in. But we're eating our dinner and the kids were asking, like, hey, it's still kind of early in the day. Could we do movie night when we get home? And they had really wanted to watch the end of Bad Guys 2.
Okay.
And so we said, yeah, but maybe you could watch the rest of that. I don't know, but there's not a lot of time left. And then I said something to my wife, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but it sparked a memory within her of the classic film, Remember the Titans. And my wife said, I'd watch that. And I'm like, that's like a 2-hour movie. But we made the decision right there after each having at least one margarita, she having 3.
Sure.
That
that's at least
we were
one.
going to let the kids stay up late on a Saturday night and watch one of her favorite movies. It's up there for me, but honestly, she could watch that a lot.
Interesting.
And watch Remember the Titans. So if you have never seen Remember the Titans, I'm sorry, I might spoil quite a bit of it here because you really should have at this point. But essentially, Denzel Washington solves racism in Alexandria, Virginia. kidding.
Yeah.
But he takes over as the coach of a football team in Alexandria, Virginia. It's set in the time of integration, and it's based on a true story. It's playing Herman Boone, and there's a lot of bits and pieces. Looks like our boy Maui Noah just got drafted, but looks like a lot of bits and pieces of integrating these two cultures, black and white, and all the things that go with it, right? There's a famous scene with Donald Faison where he goes into a restaurant with the character Sunshine. The character's like, oh, it's fine, I got it. And they get kicked out of the restaurant, not allowed to serve. My kids spent quite a bit of this movie. We spent a lot of it pausing it, where we had to answer questions of like, why does Gary's mom have no interest in getting to know Julius? And kind of like racism, because he's black.
Wow.
And my daughter started getting it by the end, because there's a scene, again, I'm telling you, I'm going to spoil this. Julius is going over to Gary Bertier's house, and he's crossing the street in this very white neighborhood. A couple ladies pass by him, and then a cop car pulls up. Cop rolls down its window. Julius hesitantly says, "Officer," and the officer kind of looks him up and down and goes, "Great game you boys played last night. Keep it up. Go get him." And my daughter goes, "Wow, I thought he was going to get arrested because he was black." And I'm like, feels like you're starting to get the movie, and maybe you're getting a little more than you than I was expecting you to here on some of this nuance. But yes, we had that experience of explaining to my children, which I love how pure their mind is, of just like, yes, some people thought less of and continue to think less of other people just because of the color of their skin. And that was quite an adventure in like, wow, I knew that this movie was about racism, but I probably didn't see it until we were in middle school, high school. And I definitely knew what the heck racism was. And so teaching that to a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old in maybe the softest entry I could think of like how to introduce this concept of like, yeah, we still want the red team to win, kind of thing, was quite an interesting experience.
Yeah, that was a good story. I enjoyed hearing that. Yeah. So I want to address that we did not have an episode last week. And for those of you listening, that is because I didn't have it in me. I had a pretty frustrating work week and personal life little mishap, and not in the same way that Mike Vrabel did. This was just, some financial slip-ups. And I just really didn't have it in me. And one of the reasons why work was so bad is, I've shared this is the first you're all hearing this, but I am employed by the federal government. If you're unaware of who is president, God bless you. And, the people who once he won was like, this is the guy I really want to work for, really felt that last week was a good week to make me not really want to work anymore. And I'm not even getting into all the nitty gritty details. I'm not even sure if I'm legally allowed to, but the point is, I didn't have it in me to just sit in front of a camera and talk, even though it probably would have been very good for me. I just didn't have the energy. And, for better reasons, I might not have the energy next week because it's the day before my wife and I go on our first real vacation internationally without the kids since our honeymoon. So it's going to be night before vacation. So I honestly might just not have the time. So I'm just letting you all know that. Yeah. Yeah. Totally fine. Yeah. So, but today, so today was they officially called it Bring Our Child to Work Day. And that was today all around the area. I'm pretty sure it's nationally that day too. So I decided ultimately that I was going to take my 6.5-year-old daughter, even though the recommended age was 8 to 12. I was going back and forth on this a lot. 1, because she's under the target age range. 2, because even though I knew it would be a positive and great for everybody I work with to use my daughter to boost morale, because she's quite cute and she's fun to be around, and and I knew that everybody would be excited. At the same time, I didn't really want to share her with the people who make me hate my job. So I was really going back and forth on what is the right move. I also didn't tell her about it until Monday. I registered her because I wanted to make sure she had a spot. I didn't tell her about it because, I didn't want to get her hopes up in case there was an issue with her being under the target age range. And we almost had a mishap where I realized last night that I had never gotten any kind of confirmation letter that she was registered. And then I emailed the person, the point of contact, and they said, well, because she's under the age range, your supervisor has to approve it. And I said, he definitely approves it. It's, an hour before I would have to get her to school. Like, do I need to pivot here? Didn't hear back, decided, whatever. If they don't let her in, I'm just going to take the day off because, frankly, that was fine. I promised her an amazing day. And the Washington Nationals had a 105 first pitch. So, like, worst case scenario, I would have taken her to a baseball game. Honestly,
Sure.
That was
Watch them lose.
Yeah, doesn't bother me. So
Go Braves.
Go Dodgers. Anyway, we finally won today. And when I say finally, as in like we lost our last two, and that bummed me out. Anyway.
Yeah.
So
Dodgers fan these days.
Yeah, very tough. So bring our child to work day was today, and I told my daughter that we were going to have the best day ever, and she goes, wait, on Thursdays I have swim lesson. And I said, don't worry, I will get you back for swim lesson. Also meant I got to leave work early, which was great. So
nice.
So without naming what government agency I work for, there was a lot of transportation related things for her to do. She got to build race cars out of Legos and race them. And she won her first heat and made it to the championship, where she lost in the first heat of the championship at the end of the day. She got to utilize 3 separate virtual reality headset simulators. One was watching a rocket launch and then catching the rocket. 2 was driving a commercial truck. The other was using controls of an actual train with like a screen up there that simulated what she was doing. It was very cool. She got a lot of swag. Everybody was happy to see her. She had to attend one meeting with me. And, it was very funny. At the beginning of the day, I told her, look, we're getting on the metro. We stopped at Dunkin' Donuts. I got her some hash browns. We split a breakfast sandwich. We were on the way, and I said, hey, there's going to be a lot of people there. I'm going to be with you the whole time, but just in case you're uncomfortable, let's do this hand signal. That means, Daddy, I'm uncomfortable. I want the situation to change. We practiced it. We got it. The one work thing she needed to do with me was a management meeting from 10 to 11. And what we were discussing, because everybody I would have trusted to leave her with was in that meeting with me. What we were discussing was whether or not we needed to make edits to a draft 50-page document on statistical standards. And I took her into the meeting with some of the word search documents she had, her tablet. At one point she turned to me and she goes like this, and it was literally the one time all day I couldn't extract her from the situation, but I found that to be very funny. And it was truly just an amazing day where I got to show her what it is that I do every day in that meeting. She realized how boring it was, but she thought it was very cool how many people knew me, who were excited to meet her, who some people who weren't even participating in the event brought her treats. They saved activities for her to help do work with, and it was just a great day for me as a dad, where I got to take my daughter with me all day, and she made something that I was probably going to dread on a normal Thursday to be pretty great. Then, since I left work early to get her to swim lesson, we made good time on the metro, which she did excellently on all trips, even with a transfer. So we got off the metro, we stopped at a brewery, I had a beer, her mom joined us, we then walked together, her to swim lesson, the first day of a new session, and then I left swim lesson a little early to pick up the other kid who I fell asleep next to on the couch because we didn't have to cook anything. And then I did swim lesson with my younger daughter because hers is parent accompaniment. And my wife was like, my wife didn't want to go to that one, even though, because not that she was gonna, but my older daughter's like, I really want to watch my sister swim. So I took them both. My wife got all the chores done. And I just literally spent 11 hours with my daughters today. And I couldn't be happier. The only time I yelled today was in the shower, not for normal reasons, but my younger one got some shampoo in her eye and she started screaming that it was in her eye. And I had to just match her volume to say, I need you to let me wash the water out of your eyes. But I wasn't angry, but I needed volume. But that was the only yell of the day. And so really that was an elongated story time, but basically what I kind of just wanted to get into was, when you take your child to work, it's not simply just, have them sit there while you work. Like it's great that at least where I work, they put a lot of energy into it. It was great that I prepped my coworkers for the one time that she needed to be in a meeting with me because, if somebody found that to be unprofessional, I wanted to make sure that I let it be known, but frankly, I wouldn't have cared either way. And, there's a lot that goes into that decision, obviously, because, you have to make sure that they are going to be excused from school, an excused absence from school, even at kindergarten. It apparently matters. I took just under 100 pictures, and it's for any of you that who have ever taken their kids to work or remember going to work with their parents. I remember going to work with my dad, and him having a giant fish tank in his office that before he opened his own company. And I also remember my younger brother coming with me and him and I fighting over who got to have more of dad's candies from his desk. I remember going to work with my mom and, all of the people who worked for my mom, had an activity for me to do since they're all pretty good at working with kids. And, I hope that today will be as memorable for my daughter as it was for me. I probably told her, I love you. Thanks so much for coming with me legitimately 25 different times today. And she kept saying, Daddy, you already said that. Why are you repeating yourself? You know what? Because I meant it every single time. Today was a great day from start to finish, talking to you, drinking some wine, enjoying myself. I took my daughter to work today and it worked out. But I didn't work out because I had.
I love that. I mean, that's a great story, and I'm glad that you got to have that time because I think, I think it's really interesting, right? My kids see me working fairly often, right? Today they came home at 4:55. I was still wrapping stuff up. If they're ever sick and they're staying home while they're sick, like they hear me on meetings. My daughter is home from 2:05 through the rest of the evening on Mondays. And so they see a little peek into what I'm doing because I don't have a door to my office. I have a curtain. right? My desk backs up to a bookshelf. I have walls behind me, and I sort of have a little alcove, and then I got a curtain that I can close for some modicum of privacy. But like the only thing they get shielded from is I'm always wearing these AirPods when I'm in a meeting, but they can still hear me talk. And they, you know, and all that. And so I feel like my kids get maybe a little bit more insights into what I do. But I think if you asked my kids what I do, they would honestly say he has meetings. He meets with people. Because that's what it feels like I spend most of my time doing, or what they recognize. Because when they don't hear me, it's because I've got my head down just doing my work, right? There's nothing to like talk about. And so much, you know, my daughter understands on a basic level, like what my job function is, right? She understands that I build websites. She started to get that more, but when she first grasped what I did, she would ask me just about every single website that she ever saw, whether it's like on my phone or some other thing. Oh, did you build that one? And I'm like, I have touched a lot of websites in my time. I work on one now. I work for a company, and I'm just kind of working on that one website constantly as my day-to-day job. But I'm like, there are a lot more websites, you know, tiny, tiny. Can't even see it if it was on a pie chart, number of websites I've touched compared to how many there are out there. So it took her a while to grasp. My son has never really asked like what I do for work, and explaining what my wife does. Like, I'm not even sure I would accurately describe it. Like, I think I would get pretty close, but like, it's kind of beyond our parents to understand it. So getting our kids to understand what she does now, you know, used to it was really easy. She was back here behind me. She was a personal trainer. She was a yoga teacher. They understood that. People come to you, learn how to work out. It was very transactional. Where I'm going with all this is I think it's really interesting when you can get a look into your parents' jobs and see them in sort of a different light than like you see them or your kids see you on like a day-to-day basis. Because my kids see me most of the time cooking or picking up or playing with them or reading them stories or whatever normal dad activities are. But you put on like a different hat, right? When you're at work and you're kind of a bit of a different person. And so I think that's really interesting, but I think it's also a really interesting opportunity to sort of not only teach our kids a little bit more about ourselves, but like help them as they're growing understand what work is. Help them, you know, we've talked quite a bit about in past episodes about, you know, how we treat our spouses can help model the types of relationships our kids have in the future, or teaching them manners or practicing gentle parenting can teach them how to deal with difficult people, be better members of society. But the fact is, for most everybody out there, you're going to need to get a pretty normal job at some point. And hopefully it's chasing your dreams. Like my daughter would love it if in 30 years, you're still working at your job and she was sitting in the big chair, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's her dream job right now. I'm not going to, you know, listen, there's a lot of ways to go on that, but that's her current aspiration. I think it's because she just wants to tell everybody what to do. And that feels a little bit like maybe that's not the right motivation, but you know, that's where she's at. And I want our kids to dream big, but I also sort of want them to have that pragmatism of understanding where they come from and, you know, not saying, oh, you have to settle. Like, I like my job. My wife likes our job. But like, if you asked 16-year-old us, heck, if you asked 22-year-old us, like, this is not where we would have projected either of us being. It's not where you would have projected yourself being at that time. Right. Because I know you hadn't even started your government career, really.
No, but you know what's interesting? I'm pretty sure it worked out for you too. But do you remember orientation of freshman year, day one, we're all in. It was the Buck back then, and we hear from Donna Shalala, and she said one thing that always sticks with me. She said the University of Miami is not going to prepare you for your first job or your second job, but your third job. My third job was communications in the government. What was my major? Communications. And I was like, how did she call that? That was wild.
I'll be perfectly honest. It did a lot more for jobs 1, 2, and 3. I'm on job 5 now.
Sure.
You would call it. And that's fine, but jobs 4 and 5 were sort of a pivot, but it was the foundation, right?
Yeah.
It was definitely a foundation, but I think it's like helping kids understand, like what we do and how we provide, right? Like it's a big thing. Like I don't think like I think we both have good days and bad days and varying levels on the spectrum of like, do we like our job at any given point in our career, not just necessarily today,
right?
But like understanding that, it's okay to dream big, but even somebody who achieves, who dreams at 5 years old of wanting to do something and achieves that every single day is not necessarily going to be like just full of gratitude at achieving that dream once they get there.
And it was funny because she said tonight at bedtime to me and her mom and her sister, she said that she didn't want to go to school tomorrow. And we asked why. And she said, I just want to go back to daddy's work. And my wife said, it's not going to be like that every day. In fact, the one part of the day that you said was boring, that meeting, is what most of dad's day is like in the office. And she goes, I really liked that. And I was like, you gave me the signal that you wanted to leave. And she goes, I liked it. And so I'm very happy that she had a good enough time where she's willing to lie to me about the most boring part of her day to go again. Maybe it was that we walked outside and got pizza. Maybe it was that everybody in there gave her candy. Maybe it's that she spun a wheel and got free ice cream. I don't know. But it was, I up until January or March of last year, my daughters saw me only working from home too. They just knew that mommy went to an office to give tours at the time. Daddy stayed home other than, 1 day a week. So it was really, I hope eye-opening for her in the sense, like you just said, that there's other people on the other side of the phone call. And, it was in her typical fashion. She was very shy in the beginning and then spent the rest of the day just like walking up to people or asking me to bring her back to certain people's offices because she just wanted to hang out with them. And it was a good day. I also liked the people she liked. I was really worried she was going to gravitate towards some people that I don't care for, but I liked I liked who she chose. So that was good. Yeah. But yeah, good day.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of, I know a lot of your life story, right? Given that we've been friends for, very long time now.
Longer than we haven't.
Right. And a lot of mine, and like, I know that, what your parents did on some level at a certain point was what you aspired to be, right?
Yeah.
How important is that to you, to feel like you inspire your daughters?
So obviously I hope to inspire them, not just with what I do, but the values I believe in. I think, there was a culture when you and I were growing up, and it definitely preceded us, but it was just, I don't know if you felt it. I don't know if you felt this way, but it's just like, I, I just felt like I had to do what my dad did. And he never even put that pressure on me. That was never something he ever asked of me.
Yeah.
But it just, you see movies, like watching movies, reading books. There's always family business, like a culture of just like, oh, like my parents are doctors, so I'm going to be a doctor. Or, my father's a
to be fair,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Without giving too much away, your dad owned his own business with your family name on it.
Yes, true.
Which
he did.
Probably does add to that, of like Johnson and Sons, whatever,
Yes.
and you feel beholden to, carry on something that literally has your name on it.
Right. And so that was part of it. But at the same time, my grandfather had a business with our name on it that my dad and my uncle had no interest in. So, it was kind of, and in a part of the multiverse, I probably would be working no longer with my dad as he's retired, but with my brother, because my brother went that route. And it came and almost came to fruition, but things took a left instead of making a right. But so ultimately, what I want my daughters to take away is actually something that my mom said to me. She said, "Ethan, we're not nice people, we're good people, and that's really all that matters." And because my mom always jokes that I'm too nice, and I just need to be a little colder. I love you, Mom. You're the best. You're so sweet. And but I just want my daughters to have a correct, in my opinion, moral sense of right and wrong. I want them to follow their dreams to the best of their ability to do so. Now, sometimes following your dream just isn't feasible. Just not only one person can be president at a time, right? And there are so
you want to be an astronaut, it's really rigorous. Like you think about some of these things,
statistics,
there are a lot of jobs out there that kids aspire to, that you see in the classic like career books. And I think what you do, and like honestly, my kids had a ABC's career book, and W was web designer, and my daughter was ecstatic, and I was like,
sure,
okay,
I'll take it.
Feels like as much recognition as I'm ever gonna get. But and that was fair to me. But in general, I didn't mean to cut you off, but in general, I do agree with you. Because my parents, unlike your backstory, like I don't think I ever aspired to what my parents specifically did, and they know that. This isn't gonna either one of them listen. It's not gonna break their hearts. Like they're here, and don't think they ever tried to talk me. Don't think they ever tried to talk me into it, because I understood. My dad had my mom was in the same job for at least the last like 20 years of her career, if not a few more, but like working in the same office, in the same role, at the same desk. Like the whole office moved buildings, but like she didn't change jobs at any point. And I really respected that. But at the same time, while I really respected that, I'm also like, what she did on a day-to-day basis was just not for me. She was a executive assistant, administrative assistant at a university. I respected that she valued working there, kind of like you working in the government, where it's just like, okay, you get some good benefits, and you get, a lot of different perks of being in this kind of institution a lot of times. But my dad was a salesman. And my dad specifically sold what he sold because of the flexibility. And he straight up told me, like, I do this because if I've made all my calls for the day, if I've done everything I need to do, if I'm on pace for my quota or ahead of it or whatever, then I get to duck out and go to baseball practice. Then I get to duck out and pick you up early. Like, I just need to take care of my stuff. And if I'm good at my job, I make more money because it's a commission-based thing. But, like, he studied something completely, he didn't study like sales or business in school. And he never really got into like what his major was, but he specifically gave up on, a career at one point that he had that he really enjoyed because it was in a different state from where my mom and I had moved. And he wanted to be closer. Right. And so, and I may have even shared that story in the past here.
He did.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
When my dad was on, plug for that episode, go check out the episode with our dads.
Yeah.
But I knew I remembered it, but I was like, I don't remember exactly what I said because I didn't say it. I was listening. Yeah. That's right.
Yep.
But what I took away from that was like, okay, one option, and I learned this as I got older. I had the moments where I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a lawyer, or I want to be president, or I want to be an astronaut, I want to be all these different things. Wanted to be a sports writer. That's what I went into college wanting to be. And I found different reasons why they weren't all the right fits for me. The doctor and lawyer thing were pretty early on. I was like, I'm okay at school, but I don't really like being here. And the idea of doing much more than I have to seems, a little ludicrous to get an entry-level job. It's just not for me. That payoff isn't there. But what I did take away is prioritizing work-life balance. I like what I do. I enjoy what I do on a daily basis, but I definitely do my job so that I can live, right? I don't live to work. I'm not following some passion that wakes me up every morning, driving me to greatness. But I go to my desk every day with a smile on my face because it affords me the lifestyle that I want and the time and the personal life that I want, right? When we graduated college, I started working I was working in college athletics, both undergrad and in grad school. And at the time I was like, I really love this. I love working with teams. I love being part of the athletic department. This is fantastic. And then pretty quickly on, my wife and I had moved in together, and I started realizing, man, sports only happen on nights and weekends. Yep. This is not necessarily how I want the rest of my life to go. Summers are a breeze, kind of like a teacher.
Yeah.
But during the school year, it was absolute nonstop chaos. And I was like, this is not how I want my work-life balance to go. Also, it didn't pay particularly well compared to like the industry at large. And so I was okay, I'm not making a ton of money and I'm not having a lot of free time if I choose this career path. This isn't what I want to do. And so after grad school, I quickly got out, and I don't know where I would be today because I loved doing that job. That was the kind of job where I loved showing up and being there and being in it, but I didn't like what it did to my personal life. And so I hope to be able to tell my kids it's okay to follow a passion. And it's also okay. My wife did it when she had her own fitness business. She followed a passion. She enjoyed the work. It drove her. And when she decided that the time was right to just not be doing that anymore, she chose not to do that anymore. And it's okay to choose both of those things. That's what I hope my kids take away from anything they might learn about my career.
Yeah. And, I am where I am today, frankly, because I made a little bit of a mistake. I was, when I was in grad school, it was for educational leadership and policy studies, for those of you listening who don't know. And what does that mean? I wanted to work. I loved being at college. Like, I loved it. to the point where I said, is there a degree where I could just be at college doing all the fun stuff at college? And so my goal was to work at a university in student activities. I wanted to be the guy that basically watched students like have a great time. Yeah, which sounds really weird when you put it that way, but at every school there is a person.
It does sound weird.
Yeah, there's a student activity center, and there's an employee who works there, and if you do it really well, it's a pretty good job too, both like with both salary and enjoyment. So
yeah,
I was going to grad school for that, but then I took an ed policy class, and I realized I really was fascinated by policy. I started interning for my state assemblyman. Really loved government work. I was doing constituent services. Every day was really fun, whether it was laughing at somebody for calling because they wanted to know the assemblyman's position on revenge porn and if he would be for the bill that made it legal, and I had to mute the phone and laugh very hard. Or the young woman who called me panicking because the UC system didn't get her FAFSA form in time, and it was the day before the semester started, and I got it unfrozen by calling like 4 people in the state, and she got to enroll in classes. I loved that. Yeah. And I made a mistake applying for a job at the federal government because what happened, I wasn't doing that anymore, but I was in a job that was also kind of fun in the sense that I was doing comms for a company. That company just happened to be a government agency. And like you mentioned with your mom, there were still today, ask me again tomorrow, some good benefits to working in the government. I won't say security anymore, but there's it was a good career. And as I alluded to earlier in the episode, there's a path where I could have gone left and I went right, where I was going to leave it and join that family business. But then, met a girl, and now I've got 2 kids with her and I live here. Right. So, life takes you places. And now my dream is providing for my family and being a full-time dad to the best of my ability. And it got a little harder starting in 2025. And I hope that in 2029, it gets a little easier again. But this is where I am. But today was a day that I got to be a full-time dad. Literally, I took my daughter to work with me, and it was awesome. So
yeah, that's awesome. Well, do you want to work on anything? Should we work on something?
I felt amazing this week. I like, not just in terms of like, I had A+ workouts, A+ cardio. I didn't work out today because I was with my daughter all day. But I didn't have a lot of work on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, so I got to work out a lot. I even felt stronger and buffer than like I had in a while, frankly. So I'm not too upset that I keep going up on the scale. Like, pants are fitting better. Like, I'm looking better. Maybe it's some muscle growth. I don't know. I would still like to be going down, but these new clothes that I bought with a gift from my parents for my birthday slightly before actually hitting my goal weight are still fitting pretty good. So I don't know what's going on, but I'm just going to keep trying to work out as hard as I can before going to Portugal. And depending on however this trip was booked, I'll try to work out when and if I can. But I did no planning, so I honestly have no idea if I can. So
cool.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah. So the fitness stuff, I've had a really good week, past few weeks, honestly. At the gym, just feeling really dialed in. I've been like switching up, my cardio a lot. Oh, I'm gonna do some assault bike. I've been doing some stair stepper, and I really started, and we had been going through a lot of rainy spells, but I really started trying to dial back in on the running, um, and getting that up. And so I'm actually making really good progress on my running in terms of like distance. Like I've slowed myself down where I'm like, okay, all I want to focus on right now is just like gaining as much distance consecutively as possible. And it can be at a snail's pace. And then once I get that distance, then work on, my time a little bit
Mhm.
more. So that's been great. But I have
Great.
been, you know, I have been reading quite a bit. And so, a little working on the book club here,
Mhm.
I've started reading, I'm still reading the Dungeon Crawler Carl series.
Mhm.
I'm still on book 4, but that one kind of has slowed down because my library only has them as like printed copies. And
Mhm.
so that kills me a little bit because I spend a lot of time during my workouts, especially running. I love
Mhm.
running with an audiobook.
Yeah.
Lifting, sometimes I need some upbeat music to really get me going. But with the running, especially at the paces that I'm going right now, it's very much
Sure.
like I just want something to entertain me and sort of take my mind elsewhere. Um, and so I have been reading a couple of books that are by I forget the name of the author right off the top of my head, but I'll get it. The first one is called Pines. It's part of the Wayward Pines series. And actually, that's not even the first one I read, but they're all by Blake Crouch as the author.
Mhm.
So I think Wayward Pines was like a TV series at one point. It got canceled after 2 seasons. So,
Yeah, it
but
sounds
it's
familiar.
based on these books, and essentially a Secret Service agent named Ethan shows up in this small town in Idaho, working a case,
No Idaho.
wakes up with a concussion, some hazy memories, trying to piece together like who he is, trying to find his wallet, his iPhone, figure out where his like partner was who was in the car wreck with him when he like drove into town. He gets in a car wreck, trying to figure it out. As he unravels this mystery, it gets absolutely wild. And I can't say too much more without kind of spoiling the twist there. But that was the second book I read by him. But I've been plowing through some Blake Crouch audiobooks. Another one was Dark Matter, which is an Apple TV series with
Mhm.
Joel Edgerton, I believe. That one is also really good, about a teacher at a college. He's like a physics professor at a college in Chicago. He gets kidnapped one night and he gets transported essentially to an alternate dimension and mistaken for somebody else, and trying to sort of piece his life together. All those kinds of things. But it's different than the Red Rising series we were talking about, or Dungeon Crawler
Yeah,
Carl, which are very sci-fi, but they're in
sure.
this like either post-apocalyptic or very futuristic. Like there's so much technological change or alien races or interplanetary dynamics. These are very grounded. It's like, what if there was one, like, what if we had the world that we have right now and one scientific advancement had
Mhm.
like changed everything? And
Right.
it's all centered around whatever that scientific advancement is. Because right now, I'm reading a book called Upgrade, which is also by Blake Crouch, and it's where like gene editing has become more
Mhm.
of a thing, right? And so
Got it.
figuring out how to edit the human genome was the thing. Or in Dark Matter, it's obviously the interdimensionary travel
Right.
aspect. And so it's sci-fi that's a lot more grounded than some of the other things I've been
Yeah.
reading. I would give most of them, these aren't like glowing, like the Red Rising series. I'm like, oh my God. Next year, if that last book hasn't come out, I may just go back and reread everything again. Dungeon Crawler
Mhm.
Carl is like addictive. These Blake Crouch books, I'm more of like a 4 out of 5 on them, which is still really
Okay.
good.
That's
They
a
are
that's a
good
B.
past they are good past the time kind
Yeah.
of books here for me. And I find them really interesting. But yeah, I've been kind of on a kick of those because I am always really scared of hating books. There are definitely some books out there. I hate I feel obligated to finish a book, but I'm having to like train that muscle of like, especially when I'm renting them on Libby from the library, like this costs me nothing to just say,
right.
No, thank you.
Yeah. And with Libby, it's like, if you're not enjoying it, someone else is waiting for it probably. So like you're actually doing somebody a solid if you're like, I'm bowing out. Speaking of doing people solids on Libby, I finished yesterday Lords of the Sith. So thank you for that.
Nice.
It was it wasn't as good as I had hoped it would be in terms of these Star Wars canonized novels that I've read that I've listened to so far. But I started because I finished that one. I started a new one yesterday called the Queen's Shadow. For those of you who watched like Star Wars, I'm only 11% into the book, but it starts at the last day of Padme Amidala's term as queen. So if you remember, she goes from Queen Amidala to Senator Amidala in the second movie, or the second movie of the prequel trilogy.
Episode 2.
Yes, episode 2, because Queen is an elected position on Naboo. So that's where we're at. Yeah. So I'm excited to get more into that. And so in my little technical difficulty that took me out of the room and back, I lost the upload for our outro. So once I upload it again, it's ultimately going to start playing, and the episode's going to end. So do you have any final thoughts before I put it in there? Okay.
Play us out.
With that, please make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us everywhere, especially on working on the dadpod.com. We will let you know if there's an episode next week, but if not, I hope you all enjoy being here while I am in Portugal. Thanks.